This week on the Brody File, and we're off. The 2016 presidential race is officially underway, and we're one-on-one with the first guy out of the gate, Ted Cruz. Congratulations on the announcement.
Well, thank you very much. It has been a whirlwind, and I'll tell you, just incredibly encouraging.
Also, the Brody File cameras are behind the scenes with another presidential contender, Rand Paul, as he talks to pastors about spiritual revival.
We need a revival in the country. You know, we need another great awakening.
And one-on-one with the Donald. He could run for president too, and as usual, he's talking tough. What would a President Trump do with ISIS over there?
First of all, nobody would be tougher than me. I would end it quickly.
The Brody File on the air and ready to blow the lid off. We're next. And welcome everybody to another Emmy Award-winning edition of the Brody File. We're glad you're with us. Well, buckle your seatbelts, everybody. The race for the White House is officially here, and boy, oh boy, is it going to be a mad scramble. It seems like everybody under the sun is running. I mean, even Dan Quayle is thinking of... No, he's not. I'm just kidding. Dan Quayle's not going to run at all. But guess who is running? That's right, the first guy out of the gate, Tom Cruise. That's right. Look, Cruz is a hit with the Tea Party, and if elected, he's going to be the first Church of Scientology president to ever... Excuse me, Oh, Ted Cruz. Not... Amber C. Strong in my ear telling me Ted Cruz, not Tom Cruise. Sorry about that. Let me make that transition. Ted Cruz running for president. Sorry, folks, my bad. The senator from Texas hoping and praying that evangelicals will help carry him across the finish line. Now, some of his critics say this is mission impossible for Cruz. Clever script writing. Anyhow, here he is, Ted Cruz, one-on-one. Senator Cruz, here on the Brody File. Senator, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
David, it's always good to be with you.
Congratulations on the announcement.
Well, thank you very much. It has been a whirlwind, and I'll tell you, just incredibly encouraging.
I want to ask you, when was the moment that you said to yourself, it's time, it's time to run for president? Was there a specific moment? Was there a specific event? What happened here in the process?
Well, look, I have had a calling and a passion for politics my whole life. But I'll tell you, in terms of running for president, I would say the last 6 to 9 months. My wife Heidi and I have been looking at it very, very seriously, and we've been praying fervently about it and really seeking God's guidance if this was the right step for us. And during that time, one of the things we've been doing is simply measuring the support. You know, nobody jumps into this. This is a maelstrom that upends your life, will upend Heidi and me and our 2 little girls and our family for 2 years. And so you don't do that without some real indication that you're going to have the support to be able to run and be able to win. And so systematically, we've been really just measuring the support, and the 2 things that have been incredibly encouraging have been, number one, the support we're seeing on the grassroots, particularly in the early primary states in Iowa, in New Hampshire, South Carolina. We're seeing just an electric excitement among conservative activists, among Christians, among Tea Party activists, among young people, and then number 2, on the financial side. We are seeing just tremendous financial support and heavy hitters stepping up in Texas and nationally, saying if you run, we're going to be with you. And then also just this incredible army of grassroots conservatives all over the country who have been pledging their support. And those 2 together really have been very encouraging and played a big role in our making the decision to go forward.
There are going to be a lot of folks that want to dip into that evangelical vote, if you will, and I can start naming them. You know, if Rick Santorum, Ben Carson, go on. Sure. I'm sure I've missed plenty. What can potentially set you apart from some other folks that might start to siphon off some of the evangelical vote here?
There are a number of good candidates in this race who I like and who I really respect, who are friends of mine. And one of the things I'll say about this campaign, it's my intention to run a positive, optimistic, hopeful campaign. There may be other candidates who get down and nasty, who get personal, who go into the gutter and launch attacks. I ain't going to be one of them, and I'm not going to reciprocate. I'm going to keep the focus on a positive vision, on the issues that matter to the people. Now, I do think it's fair game to talk about policy, to talk about someone's record and a contrast. And you know, what I would suggest to Christians is how do you measure? If you're a Christian, if you're a conservative, and you're looking at candidates in an election, we've all seen that every candidate comes forward and they say, I'm the most conservative candidate who ever lived. Every one of us has seen it, one after the other. I promise you, there will not be a single candidate in the Republican primary who stands up and says, you know, I'm really an establishment moderate who just doesn't stand for much of anything. None of them will say that. So how do we discern? How do we tell the difference if they're all saying the exact same thing? And you know, in this, as in so many other things, the Scripture gives us guidance. The Word tells us you shall know them by their fruit.
Christianity is not obviously any sort of national religion that we have,
Right.
but there are a lot of evangelicals that believe this is a Christian nation. Do you subscribe to that view?
This is a nation that was built on Judeo-Christian values.
Okay.
And this is a nation that was built by people of faith, men and women of faith, who were fleeing religious persecution and were coming to this country. And this country was founded on really a revolutionary ideas. We fought two revolutions.
Right.
One with horses and bayonets, but another, and in many ways even more important, was a revolution of ideas. For millennia, people had been told that rights come from government, that they come from kings and queens who toss them by grace and can take them away by whim. This country was built on an extraordinary idea that our rights don't come from government, they come from God Almighty.
That is Ted Cruz on the Brody File. You know, Cruz is going to have some company as he makes his way through the 2016 race. Senator Rand Paul is going to join him, and watch out because Paul has a message along with some sharp elbows. He is not playing around, and he definitely has a shot at the nomination. Paul will also be trying to capture some of the crucial evangelical vote, and so he's been trying to court pastors for over a year now. You know, our Brody File cameras were allowed into a pastor's breakfast that Rand Paul held last week in D.C. Have a look at some of what he had to say to his captive Christian audience.
We are at an impasse in our country. We're at a crossroads where something I think has to be done. I think that it's not just a matter of an actuarial problem of having way too much debt, which is an enormous problem, but I think it's bigger than that. And what I sometimes will say to pastors is that we often are looking towards government, but in some ways we need to be looking right back at you guys and you men and women, because it's a spiritual problem as much as it is any other kind of problem. All the other problems sort of stem from, I think, sort of a brokenness that there is out there that needs to be repaired.
Rand Paul, definitely a force in 2016. So one guy who is always a force is Donald Trump. And yes, the Donald is thinking about running for president yet again. When we spoke to him at the big CPAC event, I sat down with him for a little chat. So now, more on my Brody File interview with the Donald. We've talked a lot about economic matters before between you and I. ISIS now, though. This is now a whole different ballgame.
Whole new thing.
Yeah, look, a President Trump, if you will, and I put that in quotes, what would a President Trump do with ISIS over there?
First of all, nobody would be tougher than me. I would end it quickly. It would be over, and they would be calling and they would be saying, hey, what do we do? This is not what we counted on. What they're getting away with now is incredible with the beheadings. We're like living in medieval times. So it would be over with quickly, and nobody would be tougher than me. I would find our best, our smartest, our toughest general. Somewhere in the line, there's a MacArthur, there's a Patton. Somewhere we have them. You know, it's like, what are we doing now with all of this where we broadcast where we're going, when we're attacking, what time of the day? You might as well put it on television, you know, which is basically what they're doing. So nobody would be tougher than Trump, and I would clear up the problem quickly.
I get the sense that this is more than just boots on the ground. This is total annihilation. Whatever you need to do needs to be done.
We would do what you have to do. It can't go on like this.
The presidency of the United States, you've thought about it before, you've seriously thought about it before. Can you tell folks out there that this time could potentially be different, that you think that you may actually take the plunge this time?
Well, I looked at it last time. I looked at it very seriously. Unfortunately, Mitt did not do the job. I thought he would be able to. Everyone thought, we all were counting on him, and he was unable to do the job. It was an election that should have been won. It was very disappointing. I wouldn't want to see that happen again. That I can tell you. We're at a very important point in the country. Our country is in very, very serious trouble. And I will tell you that I have never been more serious about anything in my life.
What about some of the moves you're making there in Iowa? You picked up some folks there in Iowa and other places. I mean, this is showing to people.
I have great people. I have a great team. It's been written about, and a lot of people are saying, well, wait a minute, with Corey and with Chuck and with all of these people, all of a sudden, I mean, they're the best. And I have a great team, and I look forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be making an announcement one way or the other in the not-too-distant future, and I think people will be very, very surprised.
By the way, if you want more on that interview, just go over to the Brody File blog on cbnnews.com. All right, when we come back, race relations and the presidency, a closer look from a reporter on the front lines of the White House. We're back in a moment. Welcome back to the Brody File, everybody. Well, look, we know that our country has made lots of progress in race relations over the last half century or so, but clearly we still have more work to be done. U.S. presidents definitely can influence the conversation in huge ways, as we all know. This week, Jennifer Wishon talked to one person who's had a front row seat on race relations and the presidency for about 2 decades or so. It is time for Jenny in the B Block.
Go, girl!
April Ryan is White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Networks. And after being on the beat for almost 20 years, she decided to write a book. It is recently released. It's called The Presidency in Black and White. April, congratulations.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
Sure. You've covered 3 presidents, Presidents Clinton, George W. Bush, and now Obama. From your perspective, why have those presidents not been able to address race relations, racial disparities that you just mentioned in a meaningful way?
Race is something that you can't put your hands around, because one thing that I've learned from my research for the book and covering this place as far back as Bill Clinton, it's not really that far back, but for many of us it is, during the second term of President Clinton, he embarked on the race initiative to bridge the racial divide in this country. And he looked at it from 2 angles, a legislative angle as well as a heart issue. There wasn't legislation, but the heart issue. And that's really a lot of it, the heart, what's in the heart. And what's in the heart goes to the mind, and then if the mind is feeling the heart, you can kind of change the dynamic, change policy, change legislation. But really, it's a very hard subject to really grasp, because whenever you feel that one group may be getting more or getting less, there's always going to be that pushback, that friction. So we as a country have not been able to get that dynamic right, and it's sad, because in the midst of the fighting over issues, there are so many people who are impacted negatively on each side of the spectrum.
I always think, if people would just spend more time talking to each other.
Exactly, a civil discourse.
Right.
And sometimes it's such a heated issue. If we could have a civil discourse about this, I think that we would have more action, more love, more coming together. But it's a very tough issue. It's a lot of hurts from the past on all sides.
But you touch on this in the book a little bit about President Obama and the fact that there was so much hope that he could, from his position at the White House as the first African American president, do something. And there's been disappointment that not a lot has changed in those statistics that you mentioned during his presidency. What has been his roadblock?
This White House felt that if they talked about race, it would more so, it would take that, it would amplify that issue, and whatever the issue was on the table originally, that wouldn't even be heard because race would just dominate the landscape. So they've always tried to downplay it, particularly in the first term, but now it's a different day. It's second term, fourth quarter. He's going for broke now.
Well, the book is fantastic. You have stories about all three of the presidents that you've covered in here. There's even a report card at the end, but we're going to leave that as a teaser.
Yes.
But I hope people will go out and buy the book, and I'm so happy for you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Jenny. And you can see Jennifer's entire interview with Ryan on CBN.com. Just click on Beltway Buzz. That's Jenny's blog. All right, coming next, Mr. Green. Not the character from Clue. We're talking with Steve Green, the president of Hobby Lobby, who has big Bible plans for Washington. Back in a moment. And we're back here on the Brody File. So imagine, if you will, a huge museum devoted entirely to the Bible, right smack dab in the middle of the nation's capital. Well, imagine no more. Here is what it's going to look like. All 430,000 square feet of it coming to D.C. in the fall of 2017, and just a couple blocks from the U.S. Capitol. The man behind the effort is Steve Green, the president of Hobby Lobby. Now, you may remember him because it was his Christian company that took on the contraception mandate in Obamacare at the Supreme Court and won. But for Steve Green, politics isn't really his thing. It's all about the Bible and bringing people closer to God's Word. Here is some of our recent conversation. The Museum of the Bible, quite an undertaking. Tell me about the genesis, no pun intended. Tell me about the genesis of this project and what you hope to accomplish ultimately with this museum.
Well, it's been a little over 5 years ago, November of 2009, we bought the first artifact with this kind of a long-term dream of having a Bible museum. And artifacts started presenting themselves at a fairly rapid rate, and the collection grew rapidly, so we got serious about looking for a location, and it's been a pretty rapid ride over the last 5 years, and we're excited about having a museum open. We're hoping in November of 2017.
How concerned have you been to see, to use a word of literacy, folks as it relates to the Bible and not really knowing much about this book, thinking they do, even Christians and Jews and a lot of folks out there, really not quite sure what it's all about, even though they love the Bible and say they support the Bible, but they really don't know what's inside?
Well, I think what we get in the popular culture is a lot of misconceptions of what the Bible is. And because we don't teach it as we once did in our schools, we are probably more ignorant of this book than we ever have been. And I think that I think it's a fairly scary place to be, because our government is built upon biblical concepts, and if we don't understand that, then we may very well walk away from principles that are foundational to what made our nation as successful as it has been. So we just feel like it's important for people to have an appreciation for this book, and we want them to engage in this book, and we invite all people to engage with this book.
That is Steve Green here on the Brody File. Coming next, is there really a Republican war on women? Well, as Nell Carter would say, give me a break. We explain next. Welcome back to the show, everybody. All right, look, for the last 5 years or so, Democrats have been trying to peddle the notion that Republicans are engaging a war on women. Whether it be abortion, contraception, or what have you, Democrats have been hammering this theme for a while now. And look, it worked in 2012 as Barack Obama won a second term, but in 2014 it started falling flat as the GOP swept the Senate and built their majority in the House. Recently in D.C., Concerned Women for America held a high-profile panel discussion. It was called War No More. I like that title. Basically, it was an event to explain one simple fact, that this war on women mantra is bogus. Yet at the same time, there was a realization that Republicans have to do a better job of communicating their positive message to women. Take a look.
I really hope the female journalists going into the next 2 years, year and a half, really reject the 18th or 20th or 22nd assignment to do yet another story on the war on women just because Hillary Clinton is running for president. I really hope you stand up for yourself and say, I've already run that story. I know how to spell Todd Egan's name. Please, can I tackle the tough stuff?
I must say, as a woman who has worked her way up in the work world, I am particularly offended by the Democrats' equal pay for equal work mantra. Because what's the biggest impediment to equal pay for equal work in the workplace? The seniority system. Because the seniority system pays for time and grade. And women are frequently later to enter the workforce, or they leave the workforce for a time. Women are sometimes the last hired and the first fired, so a seniority system works against them. Because the seniority system says the longer you're here, the more you get paid regardless of your performance, regardless of your contribution, regardless of whether you're doing a good job or a bad job, you get paid the same. That's why we keep getting Inspector General reports that say people are watching porn all day long in the federal government, getting paid exactly the same as someone working hard to do a good job. And who is it that supports seniority systems? Unions, government bureaucracies, the constituencies that the Democrats like to protect.
War no more. The conservative ladies with Concerned Women for America preaching some political gospel. We're back in a moment. All right, welcome back, everybody. Look, before we leave you, it's time for all of us to kind of channel our inner OIvey, because it is time for the OIvey Moment of the Week. Well, look, you know, from time to time, we love to point out pretty stupid street signs that we've noticed. So here we go. How about this one? A stop sign in green. I'm confused by that. Or this. Imagine living in a beautiful home on a very pretty cul-de-sac. That's right, not cul-de-sac. Then there's this school sign. Beautiful way to spell that. That's classic. How about this sign about hell? The arrow is pointed up. I think they've got that wrong, if I'm not mistaken. I'll double check my Bible. And finally, the dreaded slow workers ahead. I believe you're supposed to put a period or something in there, punctuation-wise, where it would say slow workers ahead. Anyhow, the bottom line, OIvey, oigavolt, OIvey meers. That does it for this week. Until next time, everybody, God bless. Have a great week.